Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in. We got a busy one today. An Obama-appointed judge ripped into the Trump administration over illegal deportations, claiming that, quote, Nazis got better treatment. Border Czar Tom Homan blasted a Massachusetts city as a report shows that the state is releasing illegals charged with horrific crimes on low bails and in some cases don't even set a bail. At a meeting last month with Ken Martin, the newly elected chairman of the Democrat National Committee, former President Joe Biden apparently asked to go back out on the campaign trail for Democratic candidates. The DNC is trying to decide how to respond. Hunter Biden has hired a South Carolina lawyer to represent him in a libel case that he filed against a conservative business owner. We have the details on this latest legal challenge of Hunter Biden's. The Atlantic's editor-in-chief says he was accidentally included in a group text among Trump officials about a military strike. We have those details. And South Carolina GOP Chairman Drew McKissick joins us in week 3 of reorg for an update on how precinct meetings are going across the state of South Carolina.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
We've been following the case for just over a week now, and sparks flew yesterday, according to the New York Post, during this closely watched federal appeals court hearing with Barack Obama's appointed judge tearing into the Trump administration's plans to mass deport alleged members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. Judge Patricia Mellett, a member of the bench since 2013, dominated much of the questioning, according to the Post report, holding her hands quizzically against her chin, they said, as she grilled a Justice Department lawyer over due process concerns for the 260 purported illegal migrants shipped to the notorious El Salvador prison earlier this month under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act. I don't get what all the fixation is on these illegals' due process rights. The Democrats keep bringing up the due process rights. And as Tom Homan said over the weekend, what about the due process of Laken Riley? What about the due process of so many of the other victims of these violent domestic terrorists? I mean, the Trump administration has labeled them as terrorists. Judge Millett exclaimed at one point, there were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemies Act during World War II than has happened here. She went on to say there's no regulations and nothing was adopted by the agency officials that were administering this. The people weren't given notice. They weren't told where they were going. They were given to those people on those planes on that Saturday and had no opportunity to file for habeas corpus. Look, they're the ones who took the risk of coming to a country illegally. They're the ones who have been breaking our law. They're the ones who have literally been terrorizing communities that they live in. And this judge is worried about their due process rights. Again, ask the victims' families about what due process rights their family member had. The Trump administration had asked the appeals court to intervene and to stay the D.C. U.S. District Judge James Boberg's ruling that imposed a 14-day restraining order against the president's use of this 18th century law. The Assistant Attorney General, Drew Ensign, shot back saying, we certainly dispute the Nazi analogy. But more importantly, the fact is that individual plaintiffs were able to file habeas in time to, in order to secure relief to 5 individual plaintiffs. Judge Millett responded that the habeas corpus cases used to challenge wrongful detentions were only able to be filed because the district court, Boasberg in this case, had frozen things. So this is how it kind of went back and forth. You know, obviously, this judge hearing, or one of the 3-judge panel, there was a 3-judge panel, and this particular judge obviously doesn't think that these illegals were treated fairly. The five migrants flown to El Salvador have sued the Trump administration over deportation efforts and are being repped by the American Civil Liberties Union, which defended Boasberg's temporary restraining order during yesterday's appeal hearing. Ensign, in his opening argument, issued a broadside against Boasberg's second-guessing of the president's proclamation. And this is what this is all about. This is about a rogue federal judge challenging a president's authority. The hearing lasted about 2 hours. It went into the history of government's use of the Alien Enemies Act, including its exercise by former President Harry Truman even after the end of World War II. The Alien Enemies Act, which has only been used 3 times, we've kind of talked about this, in U.S. history, including the detention of Japanese Americans during World War II. It gives a president broad powers over non-citizens in times of war. Now, you know, the Democrats and the left are arguing, well, we're not in a war. We're not being invaded. Well, of course we are. We're being invaded by these illegals coming into our country across the southern border. Trump has designated Tren de Arga as a terrorist organization to justify his use of authority to bypass the usual channels for the deportation efforts. I think it was genius when the Trump administration thought of this, because this is a way to get rid of these criminals, to get these criminals off of American soil, which they need to. They don't have any rights here. Much of the facts of this case is being held secret because of national security reasons. The ensign kind of complained during the hearing, saying, I think the intrusion upon the war powers and foreign policy powers of the president is utterly unprecedented. The judge countered, saying it is an unprecedented action as well. She said there's no precedent for it because no president has ever used the statute in this way, which isn't to say one way or the other whether it can be done, but simply to say we are in unprecedented territory. She went on to say that the problem is not with the president's proclamation, it's with the implementation by lower-level executive officials. So she would lead you to think that she doesn't necessarily disagree with the use of the law. She's just disagreeing with how it was implemented. At one point, Ensign compared Boasberg's order to a judge hypothetically directing a carrier group to move from South China Sea to the Persian Gulf. Hang on, Judge Millett interjected. Asserting a power to do that is not ordering ships to relocate in foreign waters, right? That is a straight-up judicial process that's allowed by the Supreme Court and circuit precedent. You know, they got into the weeds of all this stuff rather than just talking about the basics of these people were here illegally, and even though that was one law that was broken, they continued to break the law by murdering, raping, assaulting, robbing, and a whole list of other criminal offenses while they're here, which should in itself lead them to immediate deportation. And that's where we have to get. We need to get to the point that anytime someone in this country illegally commits another crime while here, they should be immediately deported. No questions asked. No second chances. You come here illegal to begin with, and then you break our laws, you should be returned right then. But you got these groups like the ACLU and these woke organizations who are challenging these courts. The Trump-appointed judge that I mentioned earlier at times was seen leaning in, whispering to the third judge, which is Karen Henderson, and she was appointed to the D.C. Circuit by former President George H.W. Bush. Particularly Judge Justin Walker, who asked why neither the government nor the ACLU could state definitively whether all the migrants flown to El Salvador had only been subject to deportation claims under the Alien Enemies Act or whether they were subject to removal for other reasons, like, again, being here illegally to begin with and then breaking our laws. The ACLU attorney replied saying, I don't know the answer to that. I suspect that most people, maybe all of them, are being detained on the immigration laws because they were in deportation proceedings and the government is using the Alien Enemies Act to try and short-circuit the system. The Trump-appointed judge had a number of questions that would lead you to think that, of course, he's going to support the Trump administration and allow this process to continue. We'll see. Again, it's just sad that we have federal judges who take it upon themselves to try to undermine everything that President Trump is doing, especially when it involves making our country safe. There's no place for this. There's no place for people coming here illegally and then breaking our laws on additional laws on top of that.
Hi, Joey Hudson here. You know, this spring there's a renewed energy and focus on efficiencies, and shaking up unhealthy habits don't serve us well. There's so much chatter about making America great again, but it starts in your home with you being the best, healthiest version of yourself. And PhD Weight Loss is doing their part because for the first time ever, the first 11 callers get 2 free weeks added to your weight loss program. That is huge. PhD's out to prove that you don't need Big Pharma to reach your goals. It just creates dependency, not long-term change. Dr. Ashley Lucas researched weight loss trends for years and discovered a scientifically proven way to retrain your body to burn fat efficiently without hunger, extreme exercise, or dangerous medications. PhD clients watch their belly fat disappear, their energy skyrocket, cholesterol and blood pressure normalize without starving themselves. I lost over 30 pounds and I've never felt better. So call now and mention promo code Joey for my 2 weeks for free with my program. Call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900 or go to myphdweightloss.com.
Former President Joe Biden may want to be back in the political arena to try to help the Democrat Party emerge from the wilderness. Now, I guess he's forgotten that he was largely responsible for them going into the wilderness. Now, it doesn't appear that many Democrats are overly receptive to the offer from the 82-year-old former president, who, of course, again, many blame for last November's stinging election loss. When the party lost control of the White House and the Senate fell short in winning back the House majority from the GOP, it was just a total decimation for the Democrats. A Democrat strategist who wanted to remain anonymous, of course, said, as far as Biden's position within the current state of the Democrat Party, I think his time is over. I think his time has passed. The train has sort of moved on. Well, I would think so. And I would hope that the Democrat Party is smarter or is smart enough to not let Joe Biden get back out on the campaign trail. Let Joe Biden stay on the beach. But hey, I'm all for it. I'd like nothing better than for Joe Biden. And hey, add Kamala Harris in on the mix. Send her out there with Joe Biden. Let them go out and start campaigning for Democrat candidates. Now, this all came about because last month, President Biden met with Ken Martin, who is the newly elected chair of the Democrat National Committee, and is said to have offered his help. This, according to a source who is knowledgeable about the situation. Word of the meeting and Biden's offer to help fundraise or campaign for the party was then reported by NBC News. The offer of assistance by the former president, of course, is at a time when polling indicates that the Democrat Party brand is in desperate need of repair. So what you don't want to happen is for the person who put it in this state of unrepair to go back out there, right? The party's favorable rating sank to an all-time lows in separate national polls conducted this month by CNN and NBC. Those numbers followed a record low for Democrats in a Quinnipiac University survey back in February. So right now,
right now there's not a single poll that suggests that the Democrat Party is nothing other than in big trouble. The latest Fox News national poll, which was released last week, indicated that congressional Democrats' approval rating is at 30%. This is almost an all-time low. Some Democrats praise Biden for his past accomplishments, including during his single term in the White House. Many say it's time to move on as the party aims to rebuild. I would think so. A longtime Democrat consultant, John McNeil, told Fox News, President Biden did a lot of remarkable great things for this country. I'm sure there's still some love left for him. Well, nobody said that the Democrat Party didn't have to keep loving him. They can love him from afar. I just think that the Democrat Party, if they're smart, we know they're not, will keep Joe Biden as far away from politics in 2026 as possible. Mr. McNeil, who is part of the leadership of Unite the Country, a pro-Biden super PAC that helped boost the former president or then former vice president to victory in the 2020 Democrat national presidential primary, pointed to the 2024 election and noted that Biden is unfortunately and unfairly the guy who's going to get pegged for the losses. You think? You think Joe Biden's getting blamed? I would hope so, because he deserves the blame. And then they weren't smart enough to go to someone other than his vice president, knowing that Kamala Harris had not done anything either, knowing that Kamala Harris was perceived as being half of the equation of why the Democrats were in such bad shape last year. Joe Casaro, a veteran Democrat strategist who served on the 2016 and 2020 presidential campaigns of Senator Bernie Sanders, said there's an appetite for a message anchored in economic populism wrapped in a desire for broad system change. Following November's results, it's more than fair to say that folks are looking towards the future, which means Joe Biden stay home, stay out of this. Others who, again, asked to remain anonymous, according to Fox News, were a little more blunt. A longtime Democrat Party bundler and fundraiser argued that Biden was never a very good fundraiser. Never. He always had difficulty raising money and really didn't like doing it. There's still plenty of anger directed at Biden, who, of course, dropped out last year in midsummer after a dismal showing in a debate with President Trump. Biden was succeeded, of course, by Vice President Kamala Harris, who failed miserably. A national Democrat strategist who also close to the 2024 Biden campaign says it defies belief that the man who cost the Democrat Party the White House, the Senate, and the House believes that he's going to be the Democrat Party's savior. But this is also the same person who tried to convince America that he wasn't too old to continue as president of the United States. And I think this strategist gets it. I think this strategist nailed it. And again, I hope they put Biden out there front and center. But if the Democrat Party has any sense whatsoever left, again, they'll keep Joe Biden out of this. One person who appears very enthusiastic about the potential of Biden re-entering the political arena, of course, is President Trump, who has repeatedly blasted the former president in speeches, interviews, and on social media. Trump told reporters on Friday, when asked about the possibility of a more visible political role for his predecessor, he simply said, I hope so. And that I'm sure he does. Interesting story out of Europe. This was reported yesterday by the New York Post, that a number of European countries are updating their travel advisories for transgender travelers seeking to enter the U.S. after President Trump's executive orders declaring that there are two sexes, that there's male and there's female. Finland, Denmark, the UK, and Germany are all urging cautionary planning for transgender people when traveling to the U.S. The Danish Travel Advisory said on its website, when applying for an ESTA or visa to the United States, there are two gender designations to choose from, male or female. Now, the ESTA is the Electronic System for Travel Authorization. It's a system that screens passengers before they're able to travel to the U.S.
under the visa waiver program. The website reads, if you have the gender designation X in your passport, or you have changed your gender, it is recommended that you contact the U.S. Embassy prior to travel for guidance on how to proceed. Finland also updated its website. The Finland Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on its website, if the gender listed on the applicant's passport does not match the gender assigned at birth, the U.S. authorities may deny the application for a travel permit or visa. This new advisory does not explicitly mention Donald Trump, but it comes as of course, U.S. State Department is aligning its policies with President Trump's goals of only having a male or female on American passports. And according to an advisory on its website in Germany, Germany's issued a warning for transgender travelers to exercise caution when traveling to some countries. It did not name the U.S. or mention President Trump, but it did give this as an example. Transgender travelers may encounter difficulties entering certain countries if they present a passport with a name and photo that no longer corresponds to their gender identity. Meaning, hey, if you were born a little boy, you better be a little boy on that passport, or you're not going to get in. So far, 7 transgender Americans have sued the Trump administration. This is just another lawsuit. I mean, there's so many lawsuits. We are wasting so much money on this type of litigation that it's not even funny. The American Civil Liberties Union, again, filed on behalf of these 7 transgender Americans. And this right after Trump had signed the executive order, which is titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology and Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. Is one of his first actions in January. It reiterates that the administration recognizes that there are only 2 sexes, a male and a female, defined strictly by the biological characteristics determined at conception. It also mandates that federal agencies enforce this binary understanding of sex across the federal government, including in its health care, in its education, and military service. Trump has also faced judicial pushback, of course, for his nationwide crackdown on the illegal immigration that we were talking about earlier, as he's trying to increase the mass deportation of these illegals, the worst of the worst. And again, it's just costing all of us money because you have all of these legal challenges for all of these different actions by the Trump administration. By the way, talking about illegal immigration, a Massachusetts law that bars law enforcement cooperation with ICE is allowing illegal child rapists and other serious criminal illegals charged with what is being called as horrific crimes to be released on the streets of Boston, Massachusetts, and other Massachusetts towns. In some cases, for as little as $500, and in others, no bail is set at all. Now, Tom Homan, President Trump's border czar, said that Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey and Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, both Democrats, should be ashamed, and that despite their actions, deporting criminal illegals will be accomplished. He's not going to be deterred. Healey has previously said that Massachusetts is not a sanctuary state, although they have consistently said that they will not cooperate with ICE. Well, if you're not going to cooperate with ICE, then that kind of makes you a sanctuary state, doesn't it? Wow. The lunacy of what we're having to deal with right now is just unbelievable. The Trump administration is answering some questions about, I have to admit, a bit of a troubling report here from The Atlantic. According to this published report, The Atlantic's editor-in-chief was inadvertently included on a messaging chain of senior Trump officials that discussed plans for a forthcoming strike on the Houthis in Yemen. So here's the story. Jeffrey Goldberg wrote a first-person account of getting a connection request from what appeared to be Trump's national security advisor, Michael Waltz, on March the 11th. And this was on Signal, which is a popular encrypted messaging service that's used by journalists and government officials. Mr. Goldberg said that he accepted the invitation and was then added to a chat group called Houthi PC Small Group, where he proceeded to see a series of top Trump officials discuss what turned out to be
an upcoming attack on the Houthis in what critics are calling a massive breach of national security. Goldberg laid out how 18 members were added to the list in this group. It included Mr. Walz. It included Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. Now, what followed in the days to come, he said, was a discussion about attacking the Houthis, an Iran-backed terrorist group that has literally wreaked havoc on ships in the Red Sea and has disrupted traffic through the critical Suez Canal. The primary people in the chat raised various concerns about the timing of the strikes. Again, this is according to the Atlantic editor-in-chief's version of how this went about. And he wrote a column about this, and this is why it's getting attention. He said the discussion was about whether it was prudent to wait and the security of the operation. According to him, Vice President Vance's account expressed skepticism about the attack, saying that at one point he thought it was a mistake, and at another saying, I just hate bailing Europe out again. I get that. I understand that. Hegseth's account said that he supported raising Vance's concerns with President Donald Trump, but in the end supported the strike, writing, waiting a few weeks or a month does not fundamentally change the calculus. Number two, immediate risk on waiting. Number one, this leaks and we look indecisive. Number two, Israel takes an action first or Gaza ceasefire falls apart and we don't get to start this on our own terms, he said. We can manage both. We're prepared to execute, and if I had a final go or no go vote, I believe we should. So it appears that they all agreed that the attack should take place. The following day, according to Goldberg, Hegseth posted highly sensitive information in the chat with its operational details of future strikes. Goldberg said that he would not print them, but he claimed an adversary with access to what was written could have harmed U.S. military or intelligence officials abroad. Goldberg said he learned the timing of the Yemen strikes on March 15th from the Signal Post. According to the lengthy Hegseth text, the first detonations in Yemen would be felt 2 hours hence at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time, he wrote. So I waited in my car in a supermarket parking lot. If this Signal chat was real, I reasoned, Houthi targets would soon be bombed. At about 1:55, I checked X and searched Yemen. Explosions were then being heard across the capital city. So this was real. This was legitimate. The U.S. airstrikes took out the Houthi drones. Took out missile and air defense systems. And Waltz promoted them as an overwhelming response during an interview on ABC that day. Now, Goldberg said he was stunned with this open discussion on a non-secure channel. He said at first he doubted that the group was legitimate, and given the high-profile names and the significance of the discussion, he just said he thought to himself, no way this can be real. He said, I had very strong doubts that this text group was real because I could not believe that the national security leadership of the United States would communicate on Signal about imminent war plans. He said, I've never seen a breach quite like this. It's not uncommon for national security officials to communicate on Signal, but the app is used primarily for meeting, planning, and other logistical matters, not for detailed and highly confidential discussions of a pending military action. Now, President Trump was asked about the story at the White House yesterday, where he took a shot at the Atlantic first off, but then said that he was not aware of the story, that he had not heard about this. Here's the president.
Mr. President, your reaction to the story in the Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
And the president moved on to other topics. I'd love to get your feedback on this. This is a bit concerning. Now, everybody makes mistakes, but I'd love to hear from my military folks out there, anybody for that matter, but especially my military folks. Was this as bad as this writer is leading us to believe? It sounds like it is to me. I can't imagine discussing potential operations of a strike in a forum that could become public. Now, again, this writer fortunately kept it to himself, but still, it just doesn't look too good, does it? Love to get your feedback. Email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. You can text me as well. A South Carolina attorney, Dick Harpootlian, you may remember him as the person who represented convicted killer Alex Murdaugh in his 6-week 2023 murder trial. He has a new high-profile client. This time, Hunter Biden, the son, of course, of former President Joe Biden. Harpootlian will be representing little Hunter in a federal libel lawsuit that Biden brought against Patrick Byrne, who is an outspoken conservative who founded the online retailer Overstock.com. Byrne has been written about for years in national publications. He's been a target of the left. He's been described as a survivalist, as an entrepreneur, as a cryptocurrency advocate, as a promoter of the 2020 stolen election claims, as a libertarian, and a Trump supporter, in addition to all those. Harpootlian confirmed his representation in an interview yesterday with the state newspaper and said that the trial is scheduled to start in late July in Los Angeles. Now, here's what it's all about. In a lawsuit filed in 2023 in the Central District of California, Hunter Biden accuses Mr. Byrne of being a serial liar. So a serial liar calls someone else a serial liar. He says that he's falsely talked about in 2021 that Biden was reaching out to the Iranian government in the fall of 2021, offering to have President Biden unfreeze $8 billion in Iranian funds in return for $800 million being funneled into a numbered account for us, according to a complaint of the case that was filed in the Federal District of California. These statements are completely false, and Byrne knew them to be false at the time he made them, the lawsuit claims. The statements at issue were allegedly made by Byrne in July of 2023 in an article of an online publication called Capital Times. Now, Byrne's defense is built primarily around the fact that Hunter Biden, he believes, is a public figure who knew that he would subject himself to scrutiny and criticism in the public forum. But, you know, what we all know is that Hunter doesn't believe that rules apply to him. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, you know, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. On our guest line to start the week off, Drew McKissick, chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party. Okay, so where would you like to start today? Let's see. We have Governor Tim Walz hoping that Tesla, an American car manufacturer, will fail. Or maybe we go with Bernie Sanders, who walked out on ABC News yesterday because they asked him if AOC should run against Chucky Schumer. Where would you like to start, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I mean, look, it is just a general almost disintegration or definitely listlessness and lack of leadership and direction on the part of the Democrat Party. I mean, but both of those things basically testify to that. On the Tim Walz side, you have a elected statewide Democrat hoping for the failure of a major American corporation just because he disagrees potentially with the politics of the person who happens to run it. But, don't think anything about maybe the people who happen to work there or the people who have invested in the country, maybe people's pension funds that own stock in the company and jobs that it creates. Let's don't think about that. And then on the other hand, you've got Bernie Sanders, who's I guess you would say has a little bit of butthurt about the level of attention that the AOC wing of the Democrat Party gets. And look, that's the activist wing of their party. And that's where their grassroots are, and that's where that energy is. And they have been pulling that party further and faster to the left for years now. And it's a big part of the reason why they're in the state they're in.
Yep. This talk about replacing Chuck Schumer seems to be very serious. You think there's a chance that they might do that?
Well, there's an old saying in politics: you can't beat somebody with nobody. The first thing you have to have is a candidate, and somebody who's willing to do that. You have, what is it now, 47 Democrats in the Senate? Is that right?
Yep.
I forget off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, then you have to have a majority of that who are willing to, support somebody else, and you have to have a candidate step forward. I doubt that very seriously, but you're going to see a lot of, that sort of pushback from the grassroots base of their party and from the House side, because the House side is much more militant than the Senate side is. There's no doubt about that, because, they're elected in small districts. They don't have to run statewide.
Yep.
And they don't have to look at, a third of their class in some vulnerable states that Donald Trump happened to carry last year up for re-election. That's a very real danger for them. And Sanders knows that. He's no fool. He's very mistaken about a lot of things in life. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think he's a political fool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, I would love to see that race shape up, because I'd like the idea of potentially losing AOC, sending her back behind the bar, mixing drinks. But it scares me that she might potentially win. So, I think I'd rather have her in the House than the U.S. Senate.
Well, again, she's been doing a good job with some of the other squad and the former squad members, as they self-styled themselves, again, pulling that caucus further and faster to the left. And that has, in my view, made them easier to beat, at least nationally, because they have made themselves more alien to a great many Americans around the country and things that normal Americans believe. And their priorities are all out of whack, and it cost them at the ballot box this year.
Yep. South Carolina GOP Chairman Drew McKissick with me today. So today the Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit will hear oral arguments on whether a lower court can address the Trump administration's efforts to deport illegals via the 1798 wartime law. Your predictions on that?
That's a good one. I would think that common sense will prevail, because, again, what you're talking about is a lower court intruding on a president's direct constitutional powers. It's not like a district court judge can jump in and make a ruling about whether or not a president should be able to, shoot off a cruise missile at a terrorist camp somewhere on the other side of the world. They can't intervene in that. That is part of his powers as commander-in-chief. And that's what this gets to. I would like to think that they would sustain that. The bigger question, in my mind, is just reining in district courts in general around the country. When you have someone who's just a district court judge in some circuit out in California trying to put forward a nationwide injunction against the president, whoever the president may be, because they don't like some policy that he's about to carry forward, some regulation he's going to put in place or take away. They are district court judges. They're not national judges.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court is going to have to rein that in, because it is really it goes to the balance of power in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, this is bad for either party. I don't care who is president at the time. These lower court judges shouldn't have that type of power. All right. Of course, we're still in the middle of reorg, about to wrap things up. I went to my precinct meeting last Monday, and it was standing room only.
Good deal. Good. Well, look, this is where we rebuild our political operation now for the elections next year. So we start putting together the grassroots organization 18 months in advance, essentially. And so we can be ready once primaries are over next year, and we've got a Republican team that we have to elect, and that means we need the grassroots manpower on the ground to be able to identify and turn out Republican votes to help all Republicans up and down the ticket. And we can't do that without good organization. So we redo this every 2 years. We've had a good turnout in a good number of places around the state, about average in some others. And that's part of the problem we run into is, essentially we do this several months after an election.
Yeah.
And especially when it's after an election that we won, people sometimes can think, well, okay, we won. I can go home and I can relax now. And sometimes it's difficult to get them to come to these meetings. And that's the thing. We have to be thinking ahead because, again, there's no permanent red states, no permanent blue states. All there is the next election. You either do it right or you do it wrong. You're heading in the right direction or the wrong direction. So we've got to be ready.
Yep. And these next elections are as important as last year because we need to build on our majority. At all levels of government, but especially we need to maintain the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, build on the majority in the Senate, and so these things are important. So, but I was very encouraged. Again, I went to Spartanburg County, had 3 different nights, and my precinct met on Monday. And I got there, and the line was out the door. I thought, boy, this is – and I gave Curtis Smith a bit of a hard time. I said, Kurt, I didn't have a chair to sit in. Weren't you reserving me a place? And they had more people show up. They just weren't expecting them.
Well, and again, that's good because, again, Spartanburg's a big county. We need to make sure that we've got the manpower that we need to turn out votes here to help our statewide ticket here. That's the thing we have to remember. We're going to have most likely an open governor's race, an open attorney general's race, treasurer, comptroller, and agriculture. 5 open statewide races next year, most likely.
Yep.
And we have to be ready to turn out our vote to win all of them. We can't let Democrats get a foothold here in a statewide office in South Carolina.
Yep. Drew McKissick, always a pleasure. Have a great week. We'll check in with you next week.
Yes, sir. You have a good one. Thank you, now.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.